गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. Now we got internet. It got delayed due to internet connection only. So we were discussing in Sugama 53rd passage. In that we were discussing one Purvapaksha. When aham pratyaya itself, Purvapaksha says that aham pratyaya, what is known through aham pratyaya. What is known means what? What is known as a vachartha, the direct meaning of ahamarthaha. That is a direct meaning of I notion. That is vachartha. Not implied meaning, but direct meaning of aham pratyaya is the Atma, he says. Purvapakshi says, this we have discussed Purvapaksha. We have to answer today. I am just repeating in few words what Purvapakshi stated, and then we will go for the answer. He told what is known through the I thought. What is known through the I thought is individuality, and he says that is the Atma. That aham pratyaya vishaya are the direct meaning, not the implied meaning. In implied meaning means adhyasta, sakshi. Implied meaning is sakshi. But he says the direct meaning of I thought, which commonly we all refer to ourselves. When we refer to ourselves as I, we are referring to ourselves as an individual. He says this individual Atma is the real meaning of aham. Okay. Because it is pratyaksha. Because it is pratyaksha means it is directly seen. See how Purvapakshi says. Because in all our normal experiences, common man, we ask anybody, everybody refers to himself as I. You refer, I refer, every one of us refer to ourselves as I. And then we have an experience also. I am an individual, I am so and so. So this Atma means a certain experience of yourself, a certain understanding of yourself. We have a certain understanding or an experience of ourselves. I am like this, I am so and so. This understanding of yourself is, or this anubhava of yourself is referred by I, by the word I. So Purvapakshi says, this Atma which is comprehended through the word I, that is the individual Atma, this itself is the Atma. Why go for something else? Why say this aham pratyaya is an adhyasa? Aham pratyaya means this I notion or the reference of I. Why do you say this reference of I is adhyasa? And there is real Atma which is not available, which is not adhyasta, self-existing Atma is not referable by I thought. Okay? It is not a direct meaning of I thought, or it is not a direct meaning of I, let us say. It is beyond the I notion. Atma itself cannot be seen through I notion. I notion is a smaller one. It falls apart. When you go to deep sleep, it doesn't exist. Why say that? Purvapakshi says, the I notion, which is known through the I word I, itself is the Atma. That are, in other words, the direct meaning of I. The direct meaning of the word I. That means the vachartha of aham shabda. Aham shabdada vachartha. The direct meaning itself is Atma. This is what Purvapakshi told. Okay. And to defend his argument, this argument, by the way, looks more like a Advaitin's argument. Probably Madhvas say the same thing. It is Advaitin's argument. Okay, so he says this aham, one more thing about tata aham pratyayi mamaham janami. Here he says, through that I, word I, you refer to the I thought. Okay, this I notion, you are the I notion, that is Atma, and the I notion is known to you, isn't it? I notion is known to you because you are aware of I notion. And the same thing, the Atma is referred by I notion. Atma is referred as I notion, and the I notion is known to you. He puts the two things in the one. Knower known duality. Atma knows itself. He says Atma knows itself as I. Atma knows itself as I. Aham pratyaya mamaham janami. I know myself. This is what common people say. I know myself. Pratyakshena iva aham pratyaya vishayataya siddhaha. It is directly known that I know myself. Mamaham janami. When you say I know myself, this is a direct understanding. This is a pratyaksha. Purvapaksha told, because the Atma known through the I thought, I notion, can never give up. Atma can never stay without I notion. What he says is, Atma can never stay without I notion. It doesn't, Purvapaksha is continuing, it doesn't transcend the I notion. It always remains through I notion alone. Always with I notion. It is never free from it. This is one thing. Second thing, therefore, don't call I notion is Adhyasa. Don't call I notion is Adhyasa, because you can never be free from I notion. Atma is always associated with I notion. Even in deep sleep, I notion is there. This is what they say. I think this is a Madhva's argument. It looks exactly like there alone. Probably it is Madhva's, Dvaitin's argument. In deep sleep also, I notion is there, they say. I am sleeping, I am sleeping, I am sleeping. This thought continues throughout the sleep. This is what they say. See, in deep sleep, I am sleeping, there is a thought. He says that you remain in that thought. Continuously there is a thought that I am sleeping. That thought is there in you. That's what they say. When you wake up, oh, I slept so far. That thought you change. And you say, so that the idea is the I notion continues throughout your deep sleep. This is what they say. Remember, this is Purvapaksha. And don't say that this is Adhyasa. If it were Adhyasa, it would not continuously stick to Atma. You would have an Anubhava where you are free from I notion. Purvapaksha says, you can never be free from I notion, whether in waking, dream and deep sleep or Nirvikalpa Samadhi, all the time there is an I notion. You can never be free from I notion. Therefore, Atma's nature is I notion. Okay. And it is known to us. I know myself. I notion is Atma. I notion, Atma is referred by I notion. Atma is referred by I notion. So, and it knows itself that I am. It knows itself I am. So, therefore, I notion is Atma, and it knows itself that I am knowing. So, this is the one peculiar thing. Knower known duality, they combine in one. In the individual Atma, knower known duality, they combine. I know myself. So, this is what. And this is the argument. And continuing their argument, they said, I think we referred this in our previous class, Bhagavan Krishna, Aham Brahmasmi, Upanishad also says Aham Brahmasmi. Upanishad is also using the word Aham, I. Okay. And next, last argument is Bhagavan Krishna also refers to himself as I am Yogeshwara. Okay. So I am, I have created this world. I am running this world. So Bhagavan Krishna also has an I notion for himself. That means a Tattvajnani has an I notion. Bhagavan has an I notion. So I notion is natural to everybody, including Jnani as well as Bhagavan. Therefore, everybody knows oneself through I, and the I notion is known to him. See, everybody is an I notion Atma, and you know the I notion, and I notion is yourself. This is what is a Purvapaksha. This is a common man's thinking. Dvaitins say that. So, this much we have stated in our previous class. Now the Siddhanti answers. Vedantin, Advaiti gives a reply. It's not right. Why? Because, see, because Naitat Sadhu Uchyate, Siddhanti says this is not right. What you are telling is not right. Because Ekasyaiva Jnanakarmatvam Kartrutvam cha Ityanupapattehe. The same entity is a knower as well as the known. It is a subject as well as an object. These two can't be combined. A single thing can't be subject as well as an object. Is it possible? The same thing is a subject and same thing is an object of himself. I know myself. Can anybody say I know myself? Therefore, I know myself is a wrong understanding. Siddhanti says, I know myself, mamaham janami, is a misunderstanding. Because I is the knower. Whom do I know? I know myself. That means I am an object and I am the subject. I know myself when you say, I am the knower and I am the known. I am the subject and I am an object of myself only. How can a same person be object and subject simultaneously? Impossible. And he says, Ekasyaiva. This is also one important point. You see, the same thing cannot be subject and object. This is a special feature of Advaita. People say Advaita means always, oh, Nirgunam Brahma, Advaitam Brahma, Nirgunam Brahma, or Jagan Mithya. Only these people talk. People, you remember this point, when Advaitins are trying to present what is Advaita, Brahma is Nirguna, Jagat is Mithya. These things are very difficult to understand. And I think we should present Advaita not in this technical way, present simply, subject to object. The same thing cannot be subject and object. This only Advaitins say, nobody else says. Same entity can't be subject and at the same time simultaneously object. Knower and the known. Because knower is separate and the known is different. Knower can't be the known. That means knower cannot know himself. Knower can know anything other than himself. Knower stands as a pure knower. Subject stands as a pure subject. Subject cannot be known as an object. This feature is purely Advaitins alone say. There are few points which a common man can be made. Instead of that, they talk of Nirguna, Nirguna, Nirguna. Advaitins also don't know how to present Advaita even to common man. They immediately talk of Nirgunam, Nirgunam, Nirgunam. Nirgunam comes. Nirgunam is true, but it is difficult to understand for common man. What is easy to understand is this. You tell me, except Advaitins, nobody says that subject is different from object. They say subject, object are one. Subject knows itself and it is a subject as well as an object of itself. This is, we say that this, if subject object look together as one, then it is Adhyasa. There is Atmanatmano Ritaretar Adhyasa. In Adhyasa alone such thing is possible. Subject, that means you are adding objectness to the subject. The subject is knowing itself. I knowing myself is Adhyasa. The I remaining a knower cannot be known. If I know, what is known is not me. What is known is not me. The knower aspect alone is me. The known is not me. Known is something other than me is added to Atma, imposed on Atma. This is purely Advaitins alone can say. Okay. Therefore, this is the main argument Siddhanti is giving in reply. Therefore, in reply, he started with this essential point, touching a main point alone. See, Ekasyaiva jnana karmatvam kartrutvam cha anupapatte. This is pure. This is the main point of. So, and remember that nobody else says this. Everybody other than Advaitin, whether Vishishta Advaitin, Dvaitin, Nimbarka, Vallavar, anybody on the earth, they accept when I know myself, Atma is the knower and you are knowing yourself. Atma is available for a vritti. Atma is available for thought. Atma is available through notion. Atma is a notion also. Atma is consciousness and it is a notion also. This is what they say. They all come up to that point. They say, I am not the body. Okay, that much they accept. I am not the body. I am not the external world. But the I notion they retain as a part of Atma. Advaitins say, I notion if you have, if you can entertain any notion about the Atma, that the very notion, that very vritti is Adhyasa. You cannot have vritti about Atma. This is the vain thing about Advaitins. You can't have a notion about Atma. If you have a notion, either as a subject or as an object, any notion itself is Adhyasa. Atma is beyond a notion. Because it is a pure consciousness without being available for any notion. See, this is important. Atma is not available for any notion. But common man or generally we think, I know myself. I know myself. This is nature of Atma. They talk like this. I know myself. This is the nature. I know myself itself is Adhyasa. It is not Jnanam. It is not Jnanam. It is Ajnanam. I know myself is not Jnanam. It is Ajnanam. Ajnanam means there is a mixing up. There is an Adhyasa. Therefore, Ekasyaiva jnanakarmatvam kartrutvam chaityanupapatte. Atma cannot be the jnata, at the same time gneyam. Nacha drashtutvanna. You know, Purvapakshi answers, you say, objecting to Advaitin, the same Dvaita Purvapakshi. Dvaiti Purvapakshi continues, defends his argument. He says, how can you say it is not possible? How can you say the same thing cannot be subject and object? Subject and object are one. Subject is known. That means Atma knows itself. Atma has a notion about itself. Atma can think about it. Or in other words, I think about myself. See, if you are a thinker, you think anything. You think about anything other than you. You can't think about yourself. Purvapakshi says, yes, you can think. How? That's how we see. That is everybody's experience. See, on what strength, on what grounds he argument, he says, how can you say it is not possible? It is everybody's experience. I know myself. Everybody has. You ask anybody. You ask yourself. You ask me. Everybody says, I know myself. Therefore, subject, object are together as one. You say, subject can't be object. Object can't be subject. This is wrong, Purvapakshi says. Because it is our experience. It is everybody's common experience that you are both subject and object. The knower knows itself. When it is everybody's experience, how can you deny that? He says, Nacha drashtutvat nanupapattihi. Since it is a matter of everybody's experience, you can't say it is not possible, it is not acceptable. How to say? Yena hi drishyate jnatrana tasyaiva gneyata drishyate. Siddhanti says, no. It is not that in our anubhava also. You have misunderstood. You are calling your misunderstanding as an anubhava. Siddhanti says, you are calling your misunderstanding as an anubhava, taking the misunderstanding as a standard and then passing it as a teaching to everybody. We are telling that is the point to be questioned. Say, take is this. Yena hi drishyate jnatrana tasyaiva gneyata drishyate. See, the jnanam, the whichever the jnata, whoever is the knower, the same knower is not known. Note it. Watch in your anubhava. Subtly watch in your anubhava. The same knower is not known. When knower is knowing, He is knowing some thought, but not himself. Watch it. Yena hi drishyate jnatarana tasyaiva gneyata drishyate. Whoever is the subject, the same subject cannot become object. He says, why can't? There is. Why can't you? You are not watching. Without watching, there is an instinctive misunderstanding in every jiva. Instinctive adhyasa is there. A natural adhyasa, a natural misunderstanding. You are taking that misunderstanding for granted and taking that as a standard and talking on it. Taking that as a standard, not questioning it. What we say is, what you take as a standard, as a normal, and based upon it you judge everything else. And what we say is, you have to question the very thing. It is a wrong. You need to question. See, what needs to be questioned, further investigated, you are taking that as a standard, and with it you are measuring everything else. What you are taking as a jnanam, we say it is an adhyasa. Question it. Question means what? Watch. Watch further deeply into it. You will see, no, subject is never an object. Subject is never an object. Subject is purely subject. It can never be known. If the subject is knowing something, the known, what is known, you watch it, it is always other than subject. What is known to the subject is always other than the subject. I repeat it. What is known to the subject, to the knower, is always other than the subject. Other than the knower. Watch it. This is where you missed it. You are taking the instinctive adhyasa, instinctive misunderstanding for granted and telling that is a real fact. We say that itself is a misunderstanding, is adhyasa. We need Advaita specialities, correct that misunderstanding. And you are not questioning, taking it for granted as a standard and judging everything. We are telling that itself is a wrong. Question it there. That's where Advaita begins. Question it. You watch it. Okay. Nahi atmaiva yugapadrashta. See, yasminscha antakarane aham pratyaya vishayatvan drishyate na tadrashtu. See, if you have a notion of I know myself. Here you say, this is very important point. When you say I know myself, yasminscha antakarane aham pratyaya vishayatvan drishyate. See, there is a thought. What is the thought? Of myself. When you have a thought of myself, that is not Atma. If you have a thought of myself, when you say myself, if myself is a thought about you, that thought is not Atma. This is very how to understand. The thought of myself is not Atma. Because the thought is known. The notion is known. In waking state, you have a notion of yourself. In dream also, you have a notion of yourself. In deep sleep, you have no notion of yourself. If you have a notion of yourself, if you have a thought of yourself, if you have a vritti of yourself, both are same, all are same. The vritti of yourself, that vritti is not Atma. I know myself. When you say the myself, that is a vritti. The vritti is not Atma. Okay. Yasminscha antakarane aham pratyaya vishayatvan drishyate na tadrashtu. Adu sakshi alla. I know myself. That is not sakshi. I know myself when you said that myself, which is a notion, which is a thought, that thought is not Atma. Atma is a pure consciousness which doesn't become thought. Which doesn't constitute thought. If you have a thought of yourself, then the thought is not you. Everybody says that I know myself. If you know that what is known is not you, that is not the Atma. We thought all these days this alone is Atma. That's what Vedanta is required. That's where Vedanta is required to teach you. This is where you have to learn from Guruji. You have to learn from Guru. Otherwise, if without Guru, if it is left to oneself, ourselves, we think this I notion alone is Atma. That is the problem. Therefore, Guruji or the Shastra or Sampradaya has to teach you this I notion is not you. Oh, people say, I know myself. Then Atma Jnanam means what? Atma Jnanam means knowing yourself. Oh, knowing myself? Oh, I know myself. If you know yourself, that is not Atma. Because that myself which you know is a vritti. Vritti is not you. The consciousness is you. Consciousness doesn't form a vritti. Consciousness doesn't constitute a notion. Consciousness is not a thought. All other people other than Advaitins mix up this notion and consciousness. And that's why they say there can never be pure consciousness. Consciousness is always in the form of a notion. They always say there can never be pure consciousness. Consciousness has got to be all the time with a notion. A notional consciousness alone, you can never be pure consciousness without a notion. That means they are all Dvaitins. This is where they miss. This is what the speciality of Advaita. Okay. Atmai Vijagopadrashta Drishyascha Bhavati iti Shakyam Kalpayitum. You can't say Atma is simultaneously subject as well as an object. Atma is simultaneously the knower as well as the known. The same Atma can't be simultaneously knower and known. Simultaneously subject and object it can't be. Because drashtur drishter drishya vishayatvat. See, Swamiji's thinking is amazing. See, drashtur drishter drishya vishayatvat. This is an essential point. Drashta, the knower, always knows something other than itself. This is the Advaitin's point. A subject always knows anything other than itself. A knower always knows, the very knower knows something other than itself. Knower can't know itself. If it knows itself, he can't be a knower. If he knows himself, he ceases to be a knower. He can't be a knower. Since he is a knower, he can't know himself. Anything he knows, it is not himself. Anything, see, generally in Vedanta, you see, when you do manana or nididhyasana, if you have a thought about yourself, all those thoughts you are not. All these thoughts and notions, anything you think of yourself is not you. This is Vedantic manana. This is where you understand the manana or nididhyasana. Whatever thoughts you have about yourself, that's not you. All these thoughts are not you. Atma is free from any thought. Any thought you have about yourself is jiva, is adhyasa, is samsara. Therefore, nahi atma drashtur drishter drishya vishayatvat. Drashta's knowing, the knower's knowing is always about something else. Niramshatvacha drashtur atmanaha svavishaya jnanashrayatva siddhihi. Atma doesn't have two aspects. Amsha means aspect. In Sanskrit, niramshatvacha, Atma doesn't have two aspects. One is a knower aspect, another is a known aspect. Knower known, it is like light and darkness. Light illumines something else. Light and darkness can't be combined. Because darkness can't be a part of light. Darkness can't be an adjective of light. Can be? Darkness can't be a quality of the light. Do you find darkness having a quality of, light having a quality of darkness? They are opposite. Opposite means the one is not the other. When one is, the other is not. Therefore, consciousness in the Adhyasa Bhashya, very beginning of it, Bhashyakara says the same thing. Okay. Niramshatvacha drashturatmanah svavishaya jnanashrayatva asiddhi. Okay. Atma is niramsha. Niramsha means drashta, the knower, can't entertain a notion about itself. All notions are anatma. All thoughts are anatma. Atma is consciousness without a notion, without a thought. Consciousness not in the form of a thought, not in the form of a notion. All the notions, all the thoughts are imposed upon the consciousness. Consciousness is pure, bare consciousness. Okay. Nacha kadachit drashtuh swavishayepi pramananveshana bhavati. A knower can never direct his knowing towards himself. Means a knowing means the very knowing cannot be directed towards yourself because you can't be available. Like eyes can't see the eyes. Can you see? Can the eye see its own ball? You may see the reflection, but can't the eye? In example, I am telling in the illustration, eyes can't see its own ball. You see put the finger here, you can see. Now you can see. Still little difficulty you can see. Still you bring it. Still you bring it here. Now you can't see. If suppose finger becomes one with the eyeball, you can't see it. It has to be different to be able to see. The very seeing can see. The very seeing objectifies something other than. Seeing can't objectify the very seeing. Seeing can't objectify, because the very purpose of seeing is to see the seen, something other than the object. It can't objectify the very seer. The seeing can't see the very seer itself. Okay. Therefore, niramshatvacha drashtuhu atmanah svavishaya jnanashrayatva siddhihi. स्वविषय ज्ञान आश्रयत्व असिद्धिः द्रष्टुः आत्मनः स्वविषय ज्ञान आश्रयत्व असिद्धिः. It can't be knower of itself. न च कदाचित् द्रष्टुः स्वविषयेऽपि प्रमाणान्वेषणा भवति, because the knower can never look for knowing itself. Does knower ever look for knowing itself? Isn't it? A knower can never look to. A knower can never look to. Knower is trying to know. Knower is looking to know. When you are looking to know something else, knower can never look to know himself. A subject can never try to know. Okay? A subject can never try to know itself, oneself, whatever you say. A subject can never try to know the subject itself. That means subject cannot objectify the subject. Subject can't make the subject into object. Can subject make itself into object? See, can subject make itself into object? Then it is possible. They say it is possible. Who? All non-Advaitins say yes, subject can objectify subject. It is a contradiction. The very words is a contradiction. Okay. Can subject itself objectify? Can subject objectify itself? It can't. Can subject make itself an object? It is impossible. The very words are contradictions. Therefore, he says, nacha kadachit drashtuh swavishayepi pramananveshana bhavati. He can't look for himself. He can't try to know himself. And the very knower, the very subject can't lose itself subjecthood and become the object. Can subject lose itself and become an object? Object of whom? There is no other subject. Subject can't lose itself. Subject can't lose his subjecthood. That means knowership. The knower can't cease to be knower to become an object. Any words you shift them, it's all contradiction. It's impossible. We are trying to explain through different words. The truth is the same. The fact is same, but presenting through different words. Therefore, nacha kadachit drashtuh swavishayepi pramana anveshana bhavati siddhasyaiva hi drashtuh drishya vishayini darshanecha sambhavati. The subject who stands, siddha. See, is subject not yet known? First, do you have to establish the subject? See, do we need to establish the subject first? Do we need to establish the subject knower first and then go for knowing? He says, subject is so self-existing, naturally existing. The knower is self-existing. The self-existing knower tries to know the known. Self-existing knower, self-existing subject tries to know the object. The subject itself nobody tries to know. Nobody needs to know also. Neither tries nor needs. Allave. Knower can never try to know nor needs to know. Okay. Knower doesn't need to know because knower is already there, self-existing. This is what Advaitin's point is. Subject is self-existing. Knower is self-existing. When he knows anything other than itself. His existence, you don't need to prove or establish. You don't need to establish the subject. What doesn't need to be established? What is already there, ever existing, self-existing, that is subject, that is knower. Okay. Nahi siddhasyaiva drashtuhu. Drashta or the knower is already siddha. Drashta is already siddha. Siddhasyaiva drashtuhu drishya vishayini darshanecha. The knower always tries to know something other than himself. Subject always tries to know something other than itself. Why does he not try to know himself? There is no need. Neither possible nor need. Okay? Neither possible nor need. Neither possible nor need to know the very subject, because subject is self-existing. Subject is subject. What is, in fact, it is called subject, it is called knower because it is self-existing. Its very nature is consciousness. It is self-existing. It is self-shining, self-existing. It is already self-shining, so you don't need to do anything. It is satasiddha, self-existing or self-shining, already self-established. Okay, so siddhasyaiva hi drashturdrashya vishayini darshanecha sambhavati. Kimcha, secondly, aham pratyaye swabhutair bhashyantara vishayakaihi pratyayaihi satayam vikriyate. Now, this aham pratyaya, this I thought, when we say I notion, which is always related to the external objects. This I notion is always connected to other objects. See, kimcha aham pratyaye swabhutair bhashyantara vishayakai. Bhashya antara pratyayaihi satatam vikriyate. This is one more point. Second point, it is a good point he is raising. I thought, I notion, Atma's subject always remains uniformly subject. It can never slip down to object. But I notion keeps on fluctuating, changing, modifying. I notion keeps modifying and fluctuating. Don't you see? Modifying or fluctuating. How? I am like this, I am like that. Regarding I notion, if you have a notion about yourself, the notion keeps changing about what am I? I am like this, I am like this, I am like this, fluctuating like what am I? What am I? Okay? If you have a thought about yourself, I am so and so. If you have a I am such and such, that such and such is not always same. It keeps on modifying because that's an object. But the subject doesn't fluctuate. The pure consciousness, the knowing consciousness doesn't fluctuate, doesn't increase and decrease. Okay, but the notion of yourself keeps modifying, keeps fluctuating. See, watch this. The notion about yourself keeps fluctuating, modifying. The consciousness doesn't modify, doesn't increase or decrease. Consciousness doesn't increase and decrease. Consciousness, you can't have a concept of consciousness. You can't have an idea of consciousness. The idea is anatma. Idea is a thought. Idea is a thought, it is anatma. It is a gneyam, it is an object, not the subject. Therefore, subject, you can't have an idea about your subject. If you have a thought about your subject, if you have a notion about the subject, the notion is anatma, notion is object. That's why the notion keeps fluctuating, changing. See how Swamiji's manana. The notion is, once you have an idea, a notion, that idea can be a more and less, this and that. Okay, fluctuating. What am I? I am this and that. Okay, more and less. But the subject can't be more subject, less subject, this subject and that subject. Subject can't have variations, fluctuations, variations. That means the subject is one and it can't be objectified. In the objects alone, variations are possible. In the notion alone, variations are possible. In the subject, variations impossible. Therefore, subject is one, consciousness is one, the knower, the sakshi is one. That's why we say sakshi is one. But what is, if you have a thought about yourself, the thought, the notion about yourself can be many, it can be varying. Okay, the notion about, the I notion is varying, the subject is not varying. We started late and also I took 15-20 minutes because of internet connection. Now for another 2 months there is no problem because the internet ends and we have to reload it. We took it today now. Ram Prakash came and did it. Now it will work for another 55-56 days it will go on. Then I think I should remember the date and that day I should recharge. Okay. I think we'll continue. Now it is not going to end today, but it's a very important point of Advaita. And this shows the contrast, difference between Dvaitins. This is where Dvaitins miss or unable to understand Advaita. And if Advaitins also miss it, then we also can't understand. Though we claim to be Advaitins, we miss it. This is the main point. Okay, we'll discuss more later. This is not yet complete. I think 2 pages Swamiji is discussing. Two pages he is discussing. It's a very interesting point. Okay, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om Tat Sat. Om.